Hi, I'm Moss here with MrSpeakers Aeon, the new closed-back headphones. Well, they cost around $800, and that's about half the price of the good old Ether headphones, which, well, it's been a couple of years since Dan released those, and essentially bet his whole company on his new designs. So it's really interesting. I was really enthusiastic to find out how these came out, and so I borrowed a pair of what is actually, it's not actually a final production one. It's got stickers and stuff all over it, and little bits and pieces aren't final, but the voicing is final of this pair. And I borrowed them to have a listen, and for those of you considering a pair of, fairly high, what we might call high-end closebacks or mid-high-end closebacks, give it some impressions. So what's different? So I've also borrowed a pair by popular request of the Ether C-Flows, and if I hold them up together, I'm not trying to bump them together too much, which is kind of inevitable when you do this, you'll actually see they're both big pairs of headphones. So you haven't really lost anything in terms of size. They're still really big over-ear headphones, and they're closed back as well. The only thing is the shape is a bit different, but what is really different is how he's simplified the design. Now, the Nitinol headband design had a lot of manufacturers kicking themselves going, why the heck didn't I think of that? It's a really clever, really easy and really strong design, which uses Nitinol wire, which if you're not familiar is what's used in braces to adjust people's teeth. And it has a sliding head pad and a little brace here, and it has this nice fancy yoke. But with the Aeon, what he's done is he's taken that and he's simplified it further. Now, all he's done is put an entry point in here with a single hinge at about 40, not quite 45 degrees, giving about that much flexibility. And he's got this very basic yoke, no hinge up here, and the Nitinol headband doesn't even have a clamp on it, so it can use the natural flexibility. So that when you pop it on your head, it just fits instantly. If your head's a bit of a different shape, no problem, it'll just fit. And it's probably the only simpler system. Well, I mean, it's even simpler than the good old Mezze 99s, which were just simple as were great for popping on your head. The only adjustment you have to make is kind of just stick your fingers up here and adjust the head pad to where you want it to get when you're up, further down, and what have you. And even if these become a bit loose, they're just held in by a Phillips screw, so you can replace the head pad easily by yourself. And someone asked if he's tested for people with really large heads, and he said he has, and he had no problem, and people with small heads. But if there is a problem, he's very contactable, and you can work something out, or, if you, for some reason, you needed something different, he's a very agreeable guy, and we'll probably sort something out. But it's unlikely. But all the same, it's still a very simple and very easy to wear design. And that has made it simpler. I mean, there were engineers coming up from other manufacturers at the Tokyo Show just looking and going, just complimenting how remarkably clever it was. And so in that's where some of the I guess some of the cost cutting is done, because essentially there's only one hinge, and which is kind of emphasized by these non-final little bits of plastic in here. Now, the outside, of course, is what appears to be metal, and the earpads in this case, compared to the Ether and Ether Flow, which have earpads you can pull on and take off and put on easily, there's a little bit of a metal lip here behind which you can just see the peeling off here. They're stuck on now, so replacing these, this one seems to has torn a bit, but you replace them by, I guess, just pulling off the sticky part, much like some other brands which had stick-on earpads. So that's where things have become simplified, and they still have a very good driver in there. And of course I can't pull it off to show you, because otherwise I'd probably end up damaging the earpads, but all the same. What else has changed is we have what's called, now you have the dumb cable, which used to be an upgrade for the Ether. Now you have the dumber cable, which is essentially the same cable, but he has terminated it with a regular 6.3mm screw-on adapter and 3.5mm plug. So you have, essentially what you get on commercial headphones, regular commercial headphones, where you have a screw-on adapter like Audio Technicas and what have you. And that makes it flexible for whether you want to use it as a portable pair of headphones or what have you. And if you've already got an aftermarket cable or want to use an aftermarket cable, it's the same head-or-set connector that's on his other headphones. So in this case, though, he's recessed the jack nicely. And so if you did take the cable off and didn't need to chuck them in the bag, there's nothing there to catch on other things. So they're very much more easily portable than the other headphones, especially with this slightly thinner shape. And if you chuck them in a bag and they stretch and bend, it doesn't matter, because the Nitinol headband will not distort or be damaged. So overall, that makes them really comfortable. Now, also the ear pads themselves, they're very deep. It's a good one up to the first joint on my finger, a good couple of centimeters in there. And I'm not 100% sure if this is a final pair of pads, but I guess it may be. But I guess he's made the final one a little bit stiffer according to what I've read. But still, you've got plenty of space for your ear in there, unless you had like gigantic ears. I don't know if there are any elves out there watching my videos. Okay, jokes aside, but there should be enough space sitting on my head. They might have average size here. I have average size ears. They can move up and down a lot, and there's plenty of space for them to get comfortable and maybe slightly tune the sound, as tends to happen when you adjust headphones around on your head. So that's as far as it goes in terms of the design. It's just really basic and really clever design and really comfortable one. Sound wise, the Aeons have a fairly neutral tonality. It's probably maybe a little bit of an upper mid emphasis. I consider the MrSpeakers headphones to be kind of like a more revealing Massdrop K7XX. That is the AKG version of the headphones. Compared to the full-sized Ether C Flows, it's much the same kind of sound. It's a little bit different, but mainly it's more sound, a little bit more closed in. So like when you have them on your head, they don't produce quite as wide a soundstage as the bigger MrSpeakers headphones, or of course the AKGs, since they're closed backed. But all the same, if you just put them on and you don't compare them to any other headphones, they sound kind of open and spacious. And I guess some of that is because the mid-range presence isn't quite as strong, or the low bass presence isn't quite as strong as some other pairs of headphones. And with a slight bit of an emphasis on the upper mids, that makes them sound kind of open and airy, which works really well with acoustic music and vocals and what have you. For example, things like the Wailin Jennies or Neil Young or Santana with instruments and vocals, they sound pretty fantastic. It's only stuff with kind of a deep bass that I kind of wish for a little bit more kick, say like a Massive Attack. I listen to Angel, it's one of my favourite tracks. There's a couple of tracks from the New Basement tapes which have, a nice deep rumble to them at the beginning. And, I just wish for a little bit more kick down in that region. So to a degree, after listening to, say, something like Sony's Z1R, these tend to seem to be more like, take a little bit of a step back from the music, take a few rows further back, less kind of intimacy, kind of more spaciousness, and, very kind of almost monitor-like performance, but one that seems to reveal a fair bit about upstream components, and maybe a degree of that is because of the upper mid emphasis. For example, in my good old Studio 6 behind me, with listening with the Hi-Fi Man's HE1000, I tend to roll in a pair of Brimar tubes, which are slightly coloured, slightly warm sounding. But with the MrSpeakers Aeons, they tended to reveal kind of the slight distortion in the kind of the slightly imperfection of those tubes. And in the end, I ended up rolling back a pair of kind of very neutral and very clean sounding Sylvanias back in there. Also, I have a Solaris, an Audio Valve Solaris in for review. And that is a very slightly warm of neutral amp, and that sounds really good with these too. And something that sounds really great, I think, is the good old Chord Mojo, which is I've got strapped to a Fio X7 here at the moment. That, of course, is a very objectively designed device. It's designed to be ultra low distortion. It's designed to be ultra clean sounding, but with a slight touch of warmth, which people seem to like. And with that, it was really spot on. It had the really natural sound of instruments and vocals really shone through with the Aeons, with the Mojo, and drive was no problem. They like the other MrSpeakers headphones, seem to drive out of everything pretty well, although they do seem to scale up. And that's something also I noticed in Tokyo, because they were being demoed with a nice Cardus cable and a headamp GSX and a good source, and that's where they really shone. So they did scale up a fair bit. And even though they're only half the price of, say, the Ether C Flows, they definitely weren't half the performance. If anything, what's been, it's basically the headphone design has been simplified for the most part. And while you do lose a little bit of soundstage compared to the bigger cans, I didn't really feel like it was a loss. And again, it was only really the deep bass where I felt, it could have been a little bit better. So some other tracks I have on there, on one of my recent playlists, which also includes some tracks some other people suggested where they didn't particularly... I asked people who didn't particularly like the MrSpeakers headphones what tracks they didn't like it with, and they came up with some good answers on there, and I can understand, given that they do have a little bit of a kind of step back from the music kind of presentation. Some people may not find quite dynamic enough, quite intimate enough for the most enjoyment. They are kind of a little bit neutral, a little bit monitor sounding, and so in that regard, they are something like a technically excellent pair of headphones that will scale very well, but are not going to be the most entertaining pair of headphones out there. But still, I think they're really technically excellent and really very easy if you want to jump up from, say, jump up to a pair of headphones which does have, really good technical performance, these are going to be really fantastic, and I think a lot of people will find them excellent. It'll be interesting to find out what they work really well with. As I said, I found they work really well with the Mojo, and they seem to work really well with a lot of sort of solid state gear that's kind of very neutral and but very clean sounding. So overall, that's my impressions of the MrSpeakers Aeons, and sadly I have to give them back, and because they've got to go be demoed somewhere else. But all the same, a really fantastic effort from Dan Clark at MrSpeakers. So once again, if you did like my video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, sharing it online on social media with your friends, and chat about it. And if you do have any comments or suggestions, please do leave a comment under the video. If you do end up buying a pair of Aeons, please give me feedback and let me know how you went. If my impressions were spot on, were they different, was something missing, please do let me know. I really do appreciate the feedback. And especially if you didn't like them, I'd like to know why. I'm actually quite curious. Also, if you do see a link in any of my videos to places you can buy them, buying them through the link will help support me make more videos in the future. Otherwise, I'll see you online.